In this video I'm going to go over what I was thinking about during this trade, specifically about trade management when we take a trade inside a congestion zone, anticipating it to break out in a particular way. So this thinking is what influenced me to move my stops from here back down to here and get the full profit trade. So just briefly I'll cover what I've already discussed in previous videos, which is basically I realized that there's two main types of trade management for trades taken in the congestion zone. The first way is the in and out way, where after a move like this, maybe some profits will be taken out, or break even would be hit, and we would be out of the trade, and we would look to get back in, because the overall thesis, as long as the overall thesis of this congestion is unfinished and it is still looking like it would break out. If the overall thesis for which way the congestion will break out is still valid, then we must be looking to re-enter. Of course, another disadvantage of this trade is the re-entry may be difficult psychologically, and also it may be costly spreads and commissions wise. So recently I've been more interested in the other type of trade management, which is getting in a trade at the congestion zone, and if the congestion continues, letting the stops remain at the original spot where the thesis of which way the trade would be breaking out would be invalidated. So this is the stop loss I had for price must cross this area, then my whole idea behind this trade would be invalidated. So letting the pullbacks happen and seeing through the pullbacks was the second trade management approach I've been considering. Now, about a month ago, my view on if I'm in a trade and it is not performing immediately and the congestion is continuing, my view was this is not good for me because this is increasing my risk. But this is actually I realize now it's probably not the best thing. The longer the congestion, the more violent the eventual breakout move. That's the first principle, which I think makes sense, because the longer the congestion, that means the longer the period of time in which the players are building up their positions, in which the market is building up its positions, the big players. So that's the first principle. The second principle is, in a congestion, if we choose to get into the congestion if we choose to get into a trade during a congestion, we choose to do so only if we think it is going to break out in a particular direction. That's the whole point of getting into the trade, right? So that the validity of the read is the second principle. Now, I was considering over here the two main cases. I call it up effect score and down effect score. And the up effect score I defined as, okay, it's going to be equal to the chance of the up move happening and the impact of that up move. Similarly, the down effect score is the chance of a downward happening and the impact of a down move. So you can see this metric is it weighs into account both the chances of the move and the impact of the move. Now, the question I ask myself is, if I enter a trade over here based on some higher time frame story and the overall read telling me this congestion over here is going to break out to the upside, I enter a trade over here, right? Then I am anticipating that the chance of the up move happening is higher, sufficiently higher than the chance of a down move happening. And so, right, that's the whole reason for me to enter the trade. Okay. Now my question, now I considered the situation when, suppose the trade does not perform immediately, like over here, it actually continues to consolidate a little bit. Now I ask myself the question, if I'm over here, for example, or over here, right, if given my original overall read, and suppose my stop loss is below at this level, so my overall read is still valid, right? If I'm over here, is the chances of the up move less or more than the chances of the up move up here when I enter the trade? That is my logic, and I come to the conclusion. I come to the reason. If the overall read is still valid, then more congestion just means a longer period of time for the big players to build their positions. I do not really see any logical reason for why the chances of the up move would be significantly lower than the chances of the up move over here, if the overall read and everything still holds true. In fact, I think it makes more sense that the chances of the up move actually increase as the congestion period goes on for longer, contingent upon, of course, particular market hours. So if it is happening during a dead zone, then the story changes a little bit. But generally, this is my logic, that I don't see any reason for the chances of the up move or the chances of the down move. I don't see any reason for a reversal in terms of, oh yes, chances of this whole thing breaking down is greater now all of a sudden just because congestion has gone on for longer. When the overall read is still active and I still expect it to break out, I think it makes more sense that buyers are just building up their positions for longer, rather than the sellers have suddenly gained power from this point to this point. The sellers suddenly look good. So that's my logic. I have tested this empirically in some charts, and it seems to be relatively reliable based on the limited sort of examples I've seen. I will continue to do more testing on this. I think the logic makes a tremendous amount of sense. I don't really see any reason for a significant shift in the probabilities of the up move or down move changing when the congestion just continues on, so long as the overall read is still within valid grounds, right? So this type of thinking makes me more confident to hold on during congestion zones, as long as the congestion happens in a particular way that I find acceptable, right? So I'll go over that particular way that I find acceptable in later on. I think that's a bit more detailed and based on my research on that. But generally, to recap, if the overall thesis is valid and I enter a trade in a congestion zone expecting it to break out in a particular way, for example upwards, longer congestion period, I don't really, if it happens in a valid way, I don't think that would undermine the chances of my thesis playing out. I think it actually increases it. Reason being, longer congestion means longer period of people building positions. So if the overall thesis is good, those chances increase, and because it's a longer congestion, the impact of the eventual breakout would increase. So ultimately, this kind of logic compares how would the chances of the breakout change if the congestion goes on for longer. So I hope this logic makes sense. It makes sense to me, and I think I will be playing future trades in accordance with this logic, respecting this logic, and respecting, most importantly, my overall read of the charts, because my overall read has been quite good recently. So I think I should just if I don't grab the actual breakout leg, I think I should just let the trade do what it needs to do before it performs. Okay, so thanks, and comments and questions are very much welcome.